It is getting around to 1 o'clock and we've got a big, busy schedule here, so we can go ahead and get started here. As you come in, you should already be muted, but feel free to turn your video camera on, but please keep your audio muted for now as we wait for our presenters. So welcome everyone again. This is going to be a great turnout for us. We had a lot of registration. Really excited as more and more people are coming in. I think we've hit a really good topic area. So as everyone knows, this webinar today is going to be about integrating some of the comprehensive economic development strategy plans and our hazard mitigation planning on the local and regional level. We've called it Overcoming the Planning Silos, and I think that kind of fits it the best way. In a lot of cases in our regional organizations, we have departments that are both kind of planning their own work, and this is a great opportunity for us to transition some of those planning ways interdepartmental. So this opportunity is presented by the NATO Research Foundation through our EDD Community of Practice program, which is funded through the Economic Development Administration. So as I said, we have a very important topic today that helps us kind of create stronger, more resilient regional plans and stronger, more resilient regions. So integrating these foundational regional plans can kind of help ease that siloing between EDD departments, make identified strategies easier to implement, reduce uncertainty around economic downturns, and most importantly, ensure your region is economically resilient and responsive to hazardous events. So before we get started today, we wanted to kind of capture some of the participants' opinions and thoughts on some of your own planning capacities at EDDs. So should show up today a live poll. If you don't mind, please go through and answer some of those questions and let us know kind of where y'all are at your organizations. They should be tailored to seeing where those EDDs, CEDS, and hazard mitigation are at. So with that, I'll give you all a few seconds just to run through those and see. It's showing us here, some live results, and we'd be more than happy to share those results as we get moving here. All right, so yeah, if you haven't already, please work through those questions, those live polls, as we're kind of starting up here. Also, make sure to visit our NATO Resource Center page. We're kind of highlighting 2 new resources around this topic area that should be at the very top of that resource page that Kira posted in the chat. So check that page out and let us know what you think of those resources and how useful they are for you. So one of the main highlights that we have is a tip sheet for the CEDS and hazard mitigation integration, which kind of provides some short tips as well as some kind of scenario planning examples for everyone to use while you're working through this topic area at your district. We also have the tips from a planner implementing the infrastructure resilience planning framework, which NATO Research Foundation staff developed with Coley Smith, who's on the call with us today. The IRPF, the Infrastructure Resilience Planning Framework, is a really good planning framework for hazard mitigation professionals that aims to identify and mitigate the large-scale systemic issues and dependencies within regional infrastructure systems. So make sure to check out that NATO website for those 2 brand new resources. So over the next kind of hour or so, our run of schedule here, we're going to hear from 2 of our planning professionals from Kentucky, Coley Smith from Green River Area Development District, and Emily Hathcock from Barren River Area Development District, about how their districts are really approaching this topic area. As well on the call today, we have Naomi Friedman, who's the Economic Development Administration's National Disaster Recovery and Resilience Coordinator, and Jenny Burmester, the Federal Emergency Management Agency's National Mitigation Planning and Program Manager. Both of whom helped develop the joint EDA, FEMA, CEDS, and Hazard Mitigation Plan Alignment Guide. That's also been posted in the chat. That's a great existing resource, so please make sure to check that out at the link in the chat. After the presentations, we're going to break out into some small discussion groups. Everyone's going to be in a group of about 4 or 5. We're going to give you some prompts, but really it's a great opportunity for everyone to share some of the regional context that your EDD is working in, and how your EDD has approached this issue. So after the breakout rooms, we're going to have a short kind of report back situation to the whole group. And then we'll have a kind of brief Q&A session with your fellow practitioners and our federal partners that are joining us today. So since we have a full agenda today, let's get right into it. Our first presenter is going to be Jenny Burmester from FEMA. So Jenny, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you all for the opportunity to join you today. I'm so excited. So I'm Jenny Burmester with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the National Mitigation Planning Program. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see, you don't see that yet, do you?
Yep, you're good, Jenny. If you can press present, then it'll be full screen.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Oh, hang on there. Okay, so are we good there?
Yes.
Fantastic. So what I just wanted to share a little bit is the context. So you might think hazard mitigation planning and FEMA. What is FEMA's role in hazard mitigation planning? So what I'm sharing here on the graphic is a picture of FEMA is organized into 10 regional offices. So headquarters and our FEMA regions jointly deliver the National Mitigation Planning Program. And the headquarters has a role with working with our regulations and policies and providing some of the foundational materials. But the action really happens at the regional level. That's where our program is delivered, working with our state, the district, 5 U.S. territories, so that's state level mitigation planning, and with our local governments, as well as the direct government to government relationship with our tribal partners currently. And I mean, I'll just go ahead and move on actually to this next slide. I wanted to share just this snapshot. So this is a snapshot of mitigation plan coverage as of the end of June, giving you just that impression of the number of jurisdictions that are engaged with us. So we, as I mentioned, we just have 3 basic plan types. Right now, all of the states, the District of Columbia and 5 of the U.S. territories have approved mitigation plans. And many of our state partners are on their 5th or 6th update cycle. All of the plans are approved, reviewed and approved by FEMA for a period of 5 years. And then there's the opportunity to continuously improve, update, refine those plans. And of the 574 federally recognized tribal nations, we currently have 241 that are engaged in mitigation planning. And this map is a snapshot of our local governments. And for mitigation planning, local governments includes the traditional county, city, town. It's really every kind of local government that you can think of, including special districts. So school districts, water districts, sewer districts also participate in multi-jurisdictional planning. And as of the end of June, we had more than 25,000 local governments that have engaged in mitigation planning, have current mitigation strategies. Our local governments are on about their 4th update cycle because we had a change in the approval period for our states. So again, this repeated engagement in this planning process. And as I mentioned, the term multi-jurisdictional plans, many of the local governments, it varies how they might organize themselves. And it really varies by state as to how local governments are organized. So we do see a number of jurisdictions that engage in a single, local jurisdiction plan, that one city or town. But we see more often across the nation where we're organizing now beyond even the county level, where there's multiple counties, cities, and their towns and villages coming together along with their special districts. So in some places in the Midwest, a council of government, a planning district. These are more likely the areas that share more commonalities. And there's this opportunity to engage. But when you look at the mitigation plans, and on this slide at the very top, you can see we have a link to an interactive map where you can drill down in more detail on, does your jurisdiction have a plan, and get a better sense of where they might be in their planning cycle. But really it's a tremendous number of jurisdictions that have engaged, and even more of a success, I think, is when we talk about the population that's covered by an approved mitigation plan. And that's almost 85% of the nation's population is covered by a hazard mitigation plan. So, that's driven a bit more by jurisdictions with more population as compared to smaller jurisdictions that may have fewer people that reside. But we look both at that engagement. And as I mentioned, it's really driven by the states and how they organize planning within each state. So it varies. And this map also shows you that snapshot. In some cases, the states and their local governments are fully engaged in maintaining and updating the plan. The yellow is showing where the plans have expired, and they may be expired just for a short period of time as they're continuing the update. In other cases, it may be expired for a bit longer period, but generally we're seeing jurisdictions re-engaging. In some cases, they may go from a single jurisdictional plan into a multi-jurisdictional plan. It goes both directions, really based on how well each jurisdiction is using and engaging in the planning process. And then I'll just go ahead and move on. I don't want to use too much time here, but I did want to highlight this really exciting work that we've done with our partners at EDA. And this guide we were able to release and publish last September. So it's not been out all that long, depending on how fast you think time flies by. And this is just a tremendous opportunity today to be able to showcase the fact that this publication exists. And on the slide, you'll see just a little bit about this recognition that the planning processes have different planning areas. They have different demands on the cycle and the process, but there are some key points where that alignment, that engagement, that exchange of information can occur. And that's really, I think, one of the things that I certainly hope, as you all are taking a look at your practice area, your opportunities, the chances where we can really look at creating more resilient communities and a more resilient nation as communities are thinking about what hazards are in the area in the past that have affected them, what hazards as conditions might change in the future, both from the natural hazard itself, more intense rain, more frequent rainfall, that example, much of what we've seen across the nation this past week, but also that intersection with economic changes and the community, both in terms of people and property assets. Where are there opportunities to look at the strategies to combine these actions and activities to really create more resilience to these future natural hazard events in particular, but certainly I think there's a lot of these where we share multiple outcomes and multiple benefits. So again, I definitely recommend taking a look at this guide, and as you're engaging in your process and your updates, thinking about really ways to reach across the aisle, connect with your emergency manager, your community planners, floodplain managers, others that may be involved in working on the hazard mitigation plan, and share experiences and opportunities to look where there may be some places to reduce vulnerability and increase that resilience. So I've lost track of time, so I'll just go ahead and pause there. And again, thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Great presentation. I think a really big key piece here is just ensuring that initial integration at the geographic and planning level. So thanks for sharing that. And the FEMA guide resource that is in the chat that Jenny showed, the yellows and the blues and everything, that's accessible for everyone. And that can be a good step if you're just really not sure where or what existing plans are out there for your region. So thank you, Jenny, again. As we get going here, we do have the chat live. Feel free to post any questions that come up as they arise, and we'll hit some of those at the very end for the Q&A session. But feel free to pop those in whenever you have them. So next, we're going to hear from Coley Smith, who is the Regional Resiliency Coordinator and Economic Development Specialist at the Green River Area Development District in Kentucky. Coley has kind of helped spearhead their planning integration efforts in recent months and was the first EDD in the country to use the IRPF, the Infrastructure Resilience Planning Framework, in partnership with the Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency. And that resource is live on our website now, and the link is in the chat, so feel free to check that out. Really appreciate Coley's work on that, and really appreciate his contributions today. So Coley, with that, feel free, go ahead and take it away.
All right, everybody, thanks for letting me be a part of this discussion today. Just wanted to, talk over how we have approached this issue here at the Green River Area Development District. You'll hear in a few minutes Emily talking about everything they've done down at Barren River, which is further along in the process than we are. But here at GRAD, we have worked to consolidate who within our agency completes the hazard mitigation plan update and the CEDS update. They've both been done within our department for several years, but with staff changes and turnovers and things like that, we have consolidated it now to where my colleague and I both are responsible for either for the plans. I'm responsible for the hazard mitigation plan, and she's responsible for the CEDS going forward. I'm the staff support for our two standing committees that we have here at GRAD that are our respective steering committees for both plans, the Green River Economic Development Corporation for the CEDS and the GRAD Hazard Mitigation Council for our hazard mitigation plan. The main thing that we're looking at right now with our plans, because they're both just updated, so we completed our 5-year update of the hazard mitigation plan in 2021, and we completed our CEDS update last year. So we're doing our annual updates for our CEDS going forward. But like Andrew said, with our work that we have recently completed with critical infrastructure and infrastructure interdependencies, we are focusing right now on projects that we can pursue that will support the goals in our CEDS and mitigate threats from our hazard mitigation plan by focusing on critical infrastructure in our 7-county region. So GRAD supports 7 counties and 27 cities across a portion of northwestern Kentucky. We do a lot of work with our water and wastewater utilities. We're starting to do more work with our electric utilities, and we're just seeing how we can invest our time and our efforts with both encouraging local governments to incorporate CEDS goals and mitigation action priorities from their hazard mitigation plan into their regular budget cycles, as well as seeking state and federal level assistance through grants or other programs in order to fund projects that will increase the resilience for our communities. So from a plan integration standpoint, we have a really good working relationship with the stakeholders. That's one thing that we are fortunate with here at GRAD. A lot of the documents that I've looked at for integrating the plans, one of the main advantages is, you avoid stakeholder fatigue because you are asking a lot of the same questions from a lot of the same people to get the data that you need that underlies and supports your hazard mitigation plan and your CEDS. We're really fortunate here at GRAD with having fantastic stakeholders across our community that are regularly engaged with us. So that's not something we really battle against with stakeholder fatigue, because they are engaged with us on a monthly or quarterly basis year round every year, whether we're updating the plans or not. But it will be something we're going to keep an eye towards as we approach 2026, 2027, when our plans come back up for full rewrites, is if we are going to try to do our CEDS a year early to get both plans on the same update cycle. We are going to try to, at minimum, make sure that the plans inform each other going back and forth, and that if we're not formally updating the CEDS a year early, we'll at least have, both sets of conversations going between our stakeholder groups and make sure that one plan isn't following the other, one plan isn't fully informing the other, but it is actually like a conversation between the two plans so that we can support total community resilience within our region. Because there are economic disasters, there are natural disasters, but the thing that you don't want is for a natural disaster to trigger an economic disaster. And that's kind of the main focus we're looking for with this plan integration topic. So, again, just to recap, the main thing that we're looking at right now is how can we use the plans that we have just gotten updated to actually go after goals that will satisfy items from both plans. And we're doing that by focusing on critical infrastructure as much as possible across our region. And then as we look forward to our next update cycle, we're just looking at how we can bring the plans into better alignment to where we get plans that are workable plans that are worth the time and the capacity it takes to execute and write a well-documented and well-thought-out plan, and just make sure that there are no portions of the process that are siloed off from one another.
Thank you, Colleen. That's great. A lot of great points in there. And another big key point of the IRPF planning framework that we mentioned earlier is really that key business engagement and public utility engagement guide that's included in the IRPF. And Coley, did you have any more thoughts about that, about how that can kind of be used to kind of better inform the economic development strategies?
Yeah, the great thing about the IRPF is it really throws into stark contrast everything that relies on mainly the big four utilities, or the big four critical infrastructure sectors. So it's everything needs water, everything needs electricity, everything uses communication, and everything uses transportation. So and then there's 12 other critical infrastructure sectors for a total of 16 outside of those main four, but those core four are the ones you need to do anything. If you lose communications, people can't process credit card payments, so they're not going to sell you fuel at the gas station because they can't make money off of it. If you lose electricity, gas station can't pump fuel. If you lose water, businesses and schools have to close because they don't have restrooms. If you lose transportation, people can't go to work. If bridges fall, things like that. And a lot of the threats that we see on an annual basis that impact our critical infrastructure are natural hazard based, but they have a massive economic impact on the back end too, that can sometimes have drastic impacts on the progress that you're making with your CEDS goals. As an example, we had an incident in the city of Owensboro probably 6-7 years ago now, where the main water line coming out of our water plant burst, and the entire city was on a boil advisory, which meant every single restaurant and either had to boil all their water or had to close down. And the economic impact of that across 2 days is massive. And it wasn't even something that was able to be documented at the time. But that's just an example of what can happen if a critical infrastructure emergency occurs within your area. It can have very, very drastic economic impacts to your city that could wipe out an entire year's worth of growth.
Yeah, thanks, Coley. That's great key points there. Just working through how your systems are currently dependent and really identifying those weak points can really pay some big dividends down the road. For example, worst case scenario, like you mentioned, the water supply issue. That's a great example. So thank you for sharing that. And again, want to highlight the IRPF tip sheet that was posted on our website and in the chat right now. So feel free to take a look at that. And thanks again, Coley, for your great work on that. So next, we're going to have Naomi Friedman from the Economic Development Administration present on some of her thoughts and about this topic area. And Naomi, she's the National Disaster Recovery and Resilience Coordinator at EDA. And I know you've got some great insight for what we're talking about here. So with that, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you to NATO for organizing this webinar and everyone who is attending today. I also wanted to express my appreciation to Jenny and FEMA, who have been excellent collaborative partners in this work. As Jenny said, we're seeing a large number of climate and natural disasters and hazards playing out right now, ranging from the unrelenting heat in the southeast and southwest. We're seeing deluges of rain and flooding in Vermont and other parts of the Northeast. We're seeing ocean temperatures at record-setting highs. We're also seeing wildfire seasons that are longer than they've ever been, which then led to air quality alerts in over a dozen states this summer. So really, it's no longer a luxury to consider information about disaster risks and hazard in economic planning. It's starting to become a necessity for keeping our economies and our communities strong. In addition to protecting economic assets, whether it's downtowns, industrial parks, infrastructure, it's also a chance to think about new economic development industries that can advance disaster recovery and climate resilience. That could be new infrastructure improvements, natural infrastructure, renewable energy, carbon sequestration, and other entrepreneurial technologies. I did want to say that not in every place across the country, a lead agency or a geography or even a planning timeline may align perfectly as they seem to do in Kentucky. But that doesn't mean that there aren't also excellent opportunities for collaboration and coordination. This just includes bringing together the different parties, the different agency staff members and representatives who are writing these respective plans. It could mean doing joint public engagement, using each other's plans for data and information, and ensuring that the plans inform each other and speak to each other. Some states and regions are even developing resilience principles or frameworks, and then they're using those principles and frameworks to inform multiple plans like their CEDS and their hazard mitigation plans, which is another way to really encourage alignment. As Jenny mentioned, EDA has released a few new tools in the last several months. One is the Plan Alignment Guide, which she showcased. I also want to mention, and I think it's been put into the chat, that a few months ago, we released new climate resilience guidance for the CEDS. And that fits under the larger family of economic resilience. And I really encourage you to check out those resources because it makes these ideas more concrete and a little less theoretical. And I want to make sure people know that EDA sees itself as a resource to really help you in this work. And we're also learning from you and your leadership and your innovation in finding new ways to do things. So please be sure to keep us well informed of any of the questions you have, the needs you have, suggestions for new tools, new data, new support, new information. And also please share with us your lessons learned and your best practices. Our hope is really to be able to scale up this sort of work. Thank you very much, and please enjoy the rest of the webinar today.
Thank you, Naomi, and great point. Across the federal spectrum from FEMA to EDA, and even from NATO's perspective, we want to make sure that we're being as responsive as we can be about these issues that are affecting our local planners. So, like Naomi said, please do not hesitate to reach out at any time with questions, with comments, with ways that any of us can kind of help ease these processes. So. Just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions that come up, please feel free to use the chat. You can pop them right in the chat, and we'll get to them towards the end of the talk today. So with that, moving on to the next member of our panel, Emily Hathcock. Emily is at Barren River Area Development District in southwestern Kentucky. Emily's the Associate Director of Planning and Development at BRAD. Has been a passionate advocate for plan integration. As Coley said, they're kind of the gold star in a lot of ways in plan integration work. And I know Emily's got a great presentation here for us today. So with that, Emily, go ahead. Feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here and to present on our work. I'm a little jealous that there's a tip guide out there now. We integrated our plans fully just before that came out. So as a little bit of a background, I'm with Barren River Area Development District. We are a 10-county region in South Central Kentucky. We have 25 incorporated cities, just over 312,000 population, about 4,000 square miles. We're coming up on our 55th year as an area development district. And we incorporated 2 of our regional plans, just like we're talking about our CEDS and our hazard mitigation plan, and we kind of took it a step further as well. These were paper documents previously, 100 plus pages, almost 800 pages. We have developed 2 fully interactive websites for our plan. So they are no longer printed documents either. So our process took a deep dive. So I'm going to focus my presentation today a little bit more on the how we did all of this, just to kind of give some tips and recommendations. So just like everyone else has said, we found a lot of duplication when we sat down initially looking at these plans. On a bit further background, Kentucky has us do our hazard mitigation plans by area development district. So instead of by county or by local jurisdiction, we do them regionally, and they are on a 5-year schedule. We got really lucky that our CEDS was also on that same schedule. So ours were both due last year in 2022. And we decided to approach them together. When we sat down and looked at the requirements for both, we realized we were asking a lot of the same questions of the same people. And instead of having them come to duplicative meetings, we broke it down a little bit. So we did it as a county level steering committee in each county. And from there, we recruited members, created the plans, and then have been implementing the plans. So a little bit more on that recruiting members. In total, we had 319 participants across 159 organizations. We ended up with 20 public meetings of some sort that we called Voice of the Community meetings. These were 2 public outreach committee meeting or town hall-like meetings in each county for people to be able to provide input at 2 different stages of the process, kind of very first initially, and then as plans were developed to give a little bit more feedback. From there, we spent about 15 months actually creating county level strategic plans that then rolled up into our 2 regional plans. So months 1 through 5, we did this completely virtually. This was early 2021. And so it was still high COVID. So we did these as information gathering sessions. We held them via Zoom. We used breakout rooms to gather a bunch of information. Months 6 through 9, we did a hybrid mix of that. Sometimes we were in person, sometimes we were online. And then months 9 through 15, we really needed it to be in person to start getting those objectives and allow the committee some working time. So I'm going to go a little bit further into what each of those stages looked like. That first 5 months where we're presenting information, we were asking the communities to identify their successes. This conversation took the place of a traditional SWOT analysis and encouraged steering committees to instead focus on positives. So we asked them, hey, what's something that you're proud of right now in your community? And what's something in 5 years when we're done with this process that you want to be able to say you're proud of? What can we add to that list in 5 years? So that gave us that initial visioning statement. We then asked them to consider their critical infrastructure. What did they have? What key facilities or systems exist in each community that were vital to your activities? Do you have any hospitals, fire stations, police departments? So again, in identifying those, we're asking them to highlight their assets, asking them to consider their assets in their overall plan. And are there any things that we need to put in place to kind of address that? Then we spent 2 months going over hazards. So we did a set of natural hazards and then a set of non-natural hazards. And we defined kind of what those were and what each community had traditionally experienced in the past based upon that, and what can we do now to make the impacts less. And then we evaluated any existing plans. So this was key for us. As Colby mentioned, planning fatigue was strong and Zoom fatigue was strong. And so we took any existing planning document that community had that we could find and internally went through and compiled them and said, okay, you have this plan, it has these objectives in it. Are they still relevant? How old are they? A lot of the planning mechanisms were pre-COVID. So do we need to add anything in there post-COVID that would address any of that kind of need? And then from there, we started creating goal statements. So we did those in 11 categories. Those are broad. And we broke them into 3 working groups of these 11 categories. So affordable housing, civic and leadership development, sense of place, tourism and cultural development was one breakout group. Community facilities and services, public health and safety, infrastructure and transportation was a second breakout group. And then downtown development, economic development, and workforce development was our third breakout group. So each month when we had a county steering committee meeting, we broke those county steering committee meetings out into 3 working groups, and these were their 3 groups. What we found was that traditionally our emergency managers and our hazard mitigation minded folks went to that orange category there, that community facilities and services, public health and safety, infrastructure, transportation. Those were the areas where they knew that they had expertise and were going to give us. We had tourism commissioners who joined us. Our elected officials kind of hopped between any of the groups. Our officials in total could hop between any group, but we did find that they tended to stay where they settled. And so after we had that, we asked them to set SMART objectives in each of those categories. So not just like, hey, enhance public safety. We want specifics. We wanted a time frame around it. They needed to be achievable. We wanted to be able to look in 5 years and say, yes, we did that. Here's the proof. So we also enhanced any existing objectives that we had that we pulled from those old plans. So if they said, yes, these are still relevant, we asked them again, let's put a time frame around it. Let's put some metrics on it. Let's identify who needs to be responsible for that one. And that's where we were able also to incorporate a lot of those FEMA requirements as like, is there any funding sources out there for this one? What jurisdictions does it impact? Because we're doing county level strategic plans. Your jurisdiction might be your county as a whole, but it might be a specific city. It might be an unincorporated area. So we got really specific. And then we asked them to identify that next smallest step. So if we're saying we want to reduce life, right, what's the smallest step we can take to do that? And maybe it's we're going to advertise that our safe rooms are open and here's where they're at. And that's what we really wanted them to make into those objectives, those things that were easily achievable on the front end that we could snowball with motivation to get them rolling as we implement. And then we did prioritization. So from there, we did kind of an objective view on how we're going to prioritize each category and each objective that the plan created. So with FEMA, we had the requirement that they have to be low, medium, high priority. So we did a scale on that, and then we applied that same scale to any objectives that weren't by nature FEMA related. And we found that that worked really well. Like it might have a really high local community priority, but it might score really low on a hazard priority. But it allowed us to be able to say, but this is still important to our community. And I did see a question in the chat come through. So let me pause for a second and catch up on those. Okay, so what did we do for someone who doesn't use or like to use computers to access online documents? That was a struggle. We found that when we switched to in-person, we were able to get those from those people a lot better. And then our end documents, the steering committees were all given. The only thing that we did print were copies of our county strategic plans, because we felt that for our steering committee members, it was important for them to have a tangible physical document of their work. So we were able to give those to them. And then the second question that I'm seeing is, were the update schedules for the two plans different? Ours were on the same. We were super lucky. So our CEDS plan and our hazard mitigation plan were on the same update schedule. And then I am absolutely happy to send out a copy of my presentation for sure. Okay, so after we prioritized objectives, we now came into implementing our plans, and that's kind of where we're at now. We went from having a monthly steering committee meeting that was about an hour long every single month in all 10 of our counties, to now we do quarterly steering committee meetings. Actually just had one this morning. At our quarterly meetings, we report on any progress for their objectives, anything they've done currently. We engage anybody that needs to be at the table that hasn't been at the table yet, any new partners, any new stakeholders, any newly elected officials, because administration's changed in the middle. And then we continually revise and adapt those objectives. So what did that give us? It gave us a lot of information. It gave us 10 county level strategic plans. As I mentioned, these are all the printed documents that we did, but they're also available online. And then the living ones online also have the most recent versions of any objectives that have been changed, along with any progress. And I'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. But then we also ended up with 2 websites. We have our regional hazard mitigation plan website, and we split it out into 2 websites specifically for FEMA requirements, because FEMA was a lot stricter on what we had to have included than EDA was. And we found that if you were looking for the FEMA information, if you were looking for the information that was specific to how a tornado might hit your community, that you wanted kind of just that information. So we split that into this separate website. Our other website that we ended up with was our CEDS website, which is planning.brad.org. And it's kind of the comprehensive site. It's got all of it on there. It also links back to our hazard sites. They do link to each other. They talk to each other. So our CEDS website has a county dashboard for each county that we serve. This is where they can download their county strategic plan. They can get snapshot data for their county. We track these same data metrics across all 10 counties so that we can get a comparison. And then if you scroll back up and you click on that yellow view all objectives button, it takes you to a live page for that county where you can see where their progress is with their objectives. And then you get a table of their objectives. The nice thing about this is you can also search and filter within this. So if you want to know just what the chamber is working on, you can type that into the fields at the top and it'll filter it down for you. To meet the resiliency requirements, we also created a resiliency toolkit. This is divided into those same 11 categories that they set goals and objectives in. And on those, when you click into one of those categories, you can see all of the regional goals that have been set for that. That's all of our regional CEDS goals, all of the county level goals that have been set for that category, and then all of the objectives that are within that goal. So this is the more specific action items, right? We also provided some data for each of those categories, and we provided a local success story, which we're really proud of, for each category, so that you can see how your neighbors in a different county may be implementing the strategies in this area. And then underneath that, we continually add additional resources as we find them to each of these categories, again, to give more information, to give more context, and give examples. So where does that put us now? We're a year into implementation, and we have 982 total objectives across all of the plans. That's 169 in our CEDS, 813 in our counties. Of those, 160 are done. In the past year, they've done 160 objectives. We're super, super pleased. It's also given us the opportunity to have regional trainings with everyone and to continue those quarterly steering committee meetings. Of those 160 completed objectives, this is kind of how they break down. About 40% of those are what are considered in progress. Of the 160 are completed, of the rest, not the 160, the rest, 40%-ish are in progress. About 36.8% are ongoing, which means they're always going to be happening, right? Our completed in total is about 22%. And then we've had almost 2% where they reevaluated and said, this is really not a feasible objective for us anymore. We tried it. It's not quite what we want. It's not quite what we want to work. So we're going to remove it. So we've had about 2% of our objectives removed. As that breaks down into category, you can see here we have the most objectives in health and safety and facilities and services, kind of the least in infrastructure. We expect that this will change and fluctuate as we go on. And then that brings me just to my information. Let me scroll through the chat real quick, make sure I haven't missed anything else. Okay, so someone has asked how many staff. That is a great question. And it's kind of the question of the hour. We had five members. So we had myself and 2 other full-time staff. And then over the course of the project, we had probably about 4 part-time. So I would say 5 full-time equivalents that worked on it. Internally is how we did the website. So I did our website personally. We didn't work on an outside company. And our internal staff that worked through this process was myself, our disaster resiliency coordinator, and then we have a public administration specialist were the 3 primary. And then part-time, we had an intern. We made use of AmeriCorps members, highly recommend. Our AmeriCorps members were the ones who went out and interviewed for all of those local success stories, took the pictures, wrote them up for us, integrated it that way. And then we had a part-time administrative assistant who did a lot of the back-end logistics for us, because as you can imagine, when we were hard and heavy in this planning effort, we were on the road almost every day for 3 days of the month, or for 3 weeks of the month. And then we had a week of pause where we could do our other work. So it was staff intensive, but I would say it was worth it to have them all online and digital and aligned. And now it's provided us with a pipeline of projects so that we know what communities are looking to apply for what. We can filter it down on the back end and say, hey, these 15 communities all have identified that they want sidewalks, particularly around their school systems. So we know, hey, this might be a project that we could send out to them and push out to them. It also lets us quarterly to continue to show our relevancy as an area development district, and that we're continuing to meet with these steering committees and saying, hey, what new projects do you want to add to this? What projects have we completed? So I do highly recommend it. If you can sync those schedules up to do your CEDS and your hazard mitigation plan at the same time, it's work intensive on the front end, but it makes the job so much easier on the back end.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, great presentation. I think you're getting a lot of kudos in the chat. Thank you all for those. And another key aspect of all of this is really the peer-to-peer sharing, and that's what we're trying to build through the EDD Community of Practice program at NATO. So we want all of y'all to be able to share and work together to find the best practices that really work. And I think Emily and Coley's example really show some great ways forward. So with that, we're going to break out into some small group discussions. And again, this is really meant for y'all to share interpersonally, what you're doing in your region, what challenges you're facing, and how y'all are kind of making this work. So we're going to move into that small group discussion forum now, and you're each going to get sent to breakout rooms. So we're going to have that. It was engaging. You took something away from it. The main kind of thing on the first point, what were some of the benefits and plan integrations that you didn't expect? Did anyone want to share from the breakout rooms, particularly insightful example, or give a summary of what your group talked about? We'd love to hear it.
Well, I'll speak up. I'm not known for being too quiet. Kate Bohr, I'm with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. We're based on the southeast coast of Florida. Our region is Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie counties, and Palm Beach. We have major flooding issues. So we're no stranger to, I'm the Emergency Management Programs Director. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with CEDS. However, I've worked in emergency management and hazards for a long time, and I've seen the economic damage and impacts. So what we talked about, I guess I did most of the talking, but I had Missouri and Ohio. I can't remember the names. They were super nice people. And they are learning to integrate their CEDS with their hazard mitigation plans. And I am looking to integrate my hazard mitigation plans into our CEDS. So we were all kind of in the same boat, and we talked about impacts and hazards that different hazards, man-made hazards versus natural hazards, and how to find those impacts and how to find the estimated costs and who it affects. But the smallest hazard can cause major big issues, and they are cross jurisdictional lines. So sometimes you've got to go county to county to get the problem fixed. And so we talked a little bit about that as well. But we did talk about, when our session ended, we were talking about Ohio with river and water flooding. And so we talked about erosion, fluvial mudslides from water moving around quite a bit, and how those impacts, depending on where they take place, impact different industry sectors, and how to integrate that into SWOT analysis. Because right now, I think most of us are just having a snapshot of our region versus, saying, here's where we are, here's what the region looks like. But integrating that to build resiliency is something I think we're all kind of after. I hope I captured that, ladies. Please add anything if I've left it out.
And Kate,
yes, that was great.
Sorry.
Appreciate it. Could we get your email address? And if you want to just send it to me, I put my email address in the chat. I appreciate your input.
Oh, thanks. It's the letter K. Last name is Bohr, B-O-E-R, at tcrpc.org. And my number is 772-834-1587.
All right, thank you, Kate. And Noel on the chat spoke up a little bit. Noel Como, do you want to add anything to that?
Yep. No, I was just simply say with Kate, I work for the Northeast Florida Regional Council, Director of Planning, and Kate, I'll follow up with you relative to what y'all are doing. In our case, we have not incorporated resiliency and hazard mitigation into our CEDS. Jack Shad, for example, in our case, does our CEDS. I did pass along all the resources to him at this point, and it is one of the top aspects, one of the top priorities, I guess you'd say, we're going to do for the next one, given we've had so many issues. We did just hire, who I think is on this call or was earlier, Cassidy Taylor, our new EDA funded disaster recovery coordinator. But notably, the issue in her case and in our case as a whole with the hazard mitigation planning and planning for disaster recovery coordination with the south side of our region, notably Flagler County. Kate, you go up, you said the Indian River, so you're not covering Brevard, correct?
No, but now that you've said that, I started at the Northeast Florida Regional Planning Council when it was still the Planning Council.
Yeah.
And so I know your entire region very well, and I know Brevard and Flagler as well. So I can help you with anything you like, and I'm so glad you guys are working in that realm. The one thing I've noticed is that there's a real breakdown of knowing what plans are the ones that you want to integrate into your CEDS, which ones have the most information that you can use to build resiliency. And just for anyone, I don't want to sound like I'm just going on and on, but the 2 or 3 plans that would really help everyone is the post-disaster redevelopment plan. We have short-term recovery and we have long-term recovery. Short-term recovery is going to be your CEMP. These are plans that every county emergency manager has. They all have hazards in them. They all have estimates for economic damage and impacts in them. So your short term is going to be your CEMP. That's got all your hazards, flood hazards, fire hazards, earthquakes, sinkholes, man-made, natural disaster, technological. They have all those hazards for short term. That's a great way to integrate the pieces into your CEDS. The other plans for long term are your community rating system plan. That's a FEMA-based plan. That's something that's very important because there's a lot of technical data and mapping in there that will really help you. The other, that's a short term, but can turn into long term as well. The post-disaster redevelopment plan, PDRP. Almost every county has one in Florida, if you're coastal for sure. I'm not sure nationally how far that reaches. A lot of inland counties and inland areas don't always do them, but just in case. PDRP, CEMP, CRS, the community rating system, and your local mitigation strategy, LMS. That's the hazard mitigation plan. We call it local mitigation strategy here. But all of these have each disaster planned and written out in different ways, and you'll gain a ton of information from that. The last piece is a software called HAZUS, HAZUS. It's a program you can install, software. You plug in your disaster, and it will give you your economic impacts. It'll give you money impacts, area impacts, vulnerabilities, and so forth. Very helpful program if you're doing a SWOT analysis. And I'm going to be quiet now. But yes, email me, North Florida, and we can talk.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you, Kate, and that's great info to share, and really appreciate it. Do we have any other breakout rooms that wanted to kind of report back on anything they found particularly interesting? After that, we can move into a bit of a Q&A, but want to give everyone the chance to maybe present something that would be really great for the whole group to share.
Hi, this is Jan Morris. I'm from a BVCOG in Texas, and we had someone from Iowa and Maine and Kentucky, and I know, and so yeah, so we were talking about the coordination issue when you have counties that have their own little plans, but then how do you integrate, because disasters don't know county lines. So we were talking about that, and sometimes that can get tricky because depending down here in Texas, I'm in mid-Texas where Texas A&M is, some of our counties might qualify for disaster aid because there are more southern counties, where our northern counties don't, that we cover. So then you have that back and forth, it's like a war, and that can be hard. But I did want to bring up something that I don't think anyone talked about. About a month ago, maybe 2 months now, we hosted the Barren College Station Chamber Transportation Committee. We host them every month. And we had the top guy in transportation from Texas A&M, and he was talking about the derailment in Ohio. And I think that's something that is going to become more on the forefront. We have a busy line that runs right by the university, actually in between the campuses even. And so, they have developed a plan, but then it's like, okay, our community needs to develop a plan, based on what they've learning and they've learned and what they're learning from that derailment. So that was something that wasn't on my radar as much, but I think that is something that's close to a lot of communities, because a lot of them do have rails going through their towns.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. That's a great point. And we have those public, extremely newsworthy events that go down, and there's just as important events that happen every single day in communities that we're kind of actively working to mitigate. So it's a great point to share. Thank you for that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move into our Q&A session here with our federal partners and our panel participants, Emily and Coley here. And a question that was posted in the chat that we had wanted to get to was from Todd, and I think that Jenny from FEMA could maybe help answer this question a little bit regarding the kind of timeline here about the different plans and how to make sure that you're both meeting federal requirements of plan submission deadlines, but also creating strong integrated plans. So Jenny, did you have anything you wanted to add to that question?
I think it is a good question, and I think the answer there is probably yes. I think Emily did a nice job today in her presentation, really kind of talking about looking at the requirements of the processes and then really trying to do it once so that you can try and really amplify, leverage, maximize your investment and time, and thinking of ways that you can reduce that burden. But it is, an acknowledgement that the FEMA planning process, when the plans lapse, communities then aren't eligible to navigate the process for other resources that might be available for mitigation projects and actions. So I think that was one of the questions. Yes, it can be a challenge at that different scale. So it's also thinking through, is it one plan or is it the exchange of information between the plans or having the right people in the room? So yeah, it is super ideal when the timelines are the same. It may make it a heavier lift then for both processes, as opposed to just always being in the planning cycle. So I think you really need to look at the benefits and opportunities for your planning area, but at a minimum, it's the right people in the room that understand and can exchange that information. And again, our presenters today had some really great examples to showcase. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, and it gets back to kind of, making sure ahead of time that you're ready. So not even, maybe not just 6 months out from your next planning cycle or 1 year out from your next planning cycle, but really taking that long-term perspective, looking 18 months, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years prior, what do you need to be doing now to ensure that your next planning process is a good one? And again, we're running into a big topic here of staff capacity. Once you finish a plan, you really don't want to, start a whole nother one, but, that's kind of the nature of the beast is, making sure we have those preparations made before crunch time. And I think that creates better plans and stronger plans too. And if anyone else has any more questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. Would be happy to give you the chance to speak, and don't have to just post it in the chat. You can also just unmute and ask your question there too. All right, folks. Well, I hate it whenever people just sit and wait. But let's say we have a question in the chat. How did you choose the format of your plans? And that may be best answered by Emily. I think she gave some great examples of how they created the framework for their plans. So Emily, do you have any advice there for Leon in the chat?
Sure. We knew early on that we wanted to go away from printed plans. Kind of the example that I talked about in the breakout room earlier was our hazard mitigation plan was almost 800 pages, a lot of maps that was outdated from the moment you print it because of the nature of the mapping, right? So we knew we wanted it to be interactive. We knew we wanted it to be a website. And on top of that, I didn't want it to just be digital in that it was a PDF. I really wanted to incorporate some GIS elements to it to be able to outline that interactive parameter piece of it. The other side of that, though, that we ran into was the immediate knee-jerk of people saying, well, how is that accessible if it's online? What if they don't have access to the internet? And our response to that is, you weren't accessing the 800-page printed document that was a doorstop to the binder. At best, you were going, maybe if you were accessing it as a member of the public, you were going to the library to access it, because we did provide all of our libraries with a printed copy. But the library has internet, so now you can still maintain that level of access and access it digitally, and then also access it from your couch if you do have more connectivity. On the flip side, we also knew that 15 months of work for our local steering committees is a lot to ask of them without them having something they could hold in their hand. And for them to be able to go out to their community and say, hey, we did this, this is ours. So we opted to give each county that printed steering county strategic plan. And I'll just add on to what Jenny said earlier with it being, is it one plan, is it 3 plans? Our local steering committees really only knew that they were working on a local county level strategic plan. On the back end, our staff rolled it into all of those other plans, right? So our stakeholders, they were working on their county's plan. And then we sought those overlaps where we could roll things up from a FEMA side, from a CEDS side. And really, we got we got really informed from a staff perspective as to what those objectives on FEMA's side required, like what type of specific action item was required to meet that, and made sure that we were writing objectives that fit that as they're identifying them in their county strategic plans. So locally, they're like, yeah, we made a county strategic plan. And then also regionally, we got these other 2 plans out of it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. That's a great point. You know, getting back to that 1 plan, 2 plan, 3 plan thing, I think that's a great example. So thanks again, Jenny, for sharing that. All right, well, not seeing any more questions in the chat. Feel free to post as they may come in, but just wanted to take the time again as we kind of wrap up here to thank you all for joining us today. I know this is a really big topic area, so I think that the NATO Research Foundation staff, you know, we're committed to kind of exploring this issue out, seeing where we can best fit into this education and training opportunities. So I'm going to go ahead and post my email in the chat. If you have any other ways that you feel that NATO can kind of best support our membership on the ground, please feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to have any conversations with you all about that. So as we kind of wrap up, again, want to point you towards our NATO Research Foundation Resource Center that's live on our website. We have the EDDs in Action case study series, which can be accessed there at the Resource Center, as well as the resources related to our EDD community of practice, which is supporting the webinar today. As you close out of the Zoom meeting here, there is a kind of post-evaluations survey, so please do answer those questions. It really helps us figure out what resources and trainings are valuable and what members are getting out of our opportunities here today. So thanks again for joining us. And as always, you know, let us at NATO know any ways that we can best support all of y'all's great work at EDDs across the country. So thanks again, and look forward to more discussions on this topic. Thank you, folks.